We are now live on Facebook. Here I am, having a wonderful Saturday evening with Billy Mann. Hi, Billy.
Hey, Kush. Hi, all.
So we might have some people join us today. We might just be you and I, because other people have got better things to do with their Saturday evenings.
But this is important.
This is serious. This is really important. Absolutely.
This is really important.
Yeah, we're going to be really, really serious here. Of course.
Yes. I may be smiling a lot, but I'm very serious behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's funny. I was supposed to be on a plane to Las Vegas today, but I'm not, because I was so organized.
There's a surprise.
I was the most organized I've ever been. Hi, Ivo. Hi, Ty. We've got a few people watching us. I'm so organized that I planned everything. I was the most organized I've been. And then the document where I kept all my documents, the wallet where I put everything together so I don't lose anything, I left it on the bed. And so I got to the airport without a passport, which is very, very clever of me. But it did mean I wanted to do this actually, and I didn't think I'd have time, and I was thinking we might do something like this in Vegas. But it's worked out that we have this evening to do this, and
this narrow window this
evening, which I'm so glad, because I've been posting some stuff. I posted some stuff at the end of last year, and it got a bit of debate going in the group, and we've seen some other people kind of jump in, and we've got some differing opinions, and I've seen stuff that you've write as well, and like you said, it's, you messaged me earlier today and said, God, it's been getting some debate going, and it's fun and it's interesting. And I think the thing with a posts are really cool, and I actually like writing. I really enjoy it. I know you do too. But sometimes you can miss some of the nuance in writing, especially something like that, and especially maybe where it's challenging. So I thought a little conversation could be cool. So maybe let's just start with the last post that you wrote. I think yesterday, God, it feels like longer than that, but I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, about, do you have your own coach? And as you said, kind of full disclosure, I'm coaching you, Steve's coaching me, and we've both learned from various teachers and mentors and guides, like Keith Blevins and Jamie Smart and other people too. And there was a little bit of a debate around like, why do you need a coach? Surely we're 3P coaches. We're pointing to the inside out. Aren't you, Billy, and me too? Aren't we pointing people to the outside in, going, yeah, it all works inside out, but in the realm of business, you need a coach? Isn't that outside in misunderstanding, buddy?
Depends on how you look at it, I suppose. Really, to me, it's a very personal opinion, and it was, for me, what really struck me in this was when I put this out, the responses went back and forth between spirituality and not needing a coach and to needing a coach, and they went back and forth, and it was such a wonderful conversation to watch the whole thing play out, and I found it incredibly rewarding and nourishing. And I said that to you, that it was great fun to see people really get engaged and get passionate about what they believe in. And I would very much be, for a long time, deeply immersed in just the spirituality aspect of it. Because the fundamental basis of the 3 Ps is inside out. We have everything that we need within us. The story of who we are and how we play out in the self, etc., is already within us. I get that. Absolutely. And I lived that for a long time. But one of the things you and I were speaking about recently is effectiveness. how effective are we really? We measure, really at the end of the day, we can measure the feedback and the effectiveness of our work, and how we create that space for people, and how we quarterback their lives. We're there to guide them, we're there to support them, we're there to help them see the blind spots that they're not seeing for themselves, and so on and so forth. Now, kind of spirituality itself can be a blind spot, really.
What do you mean
because
by
it's
that?
Well, I know this can be slightly controversial, Kush. If what became apparent to me listening to Sydney Banks and watching how he played out, and I mentioned it a little bit, and I hadn't quite put it together until we used the word effective, was that Sydney Banks, and listening to the old audios, very much was based on, because I assume with his upbringing, a very deeply Christian, the Christ consciousness. He spoke about that very frequently. And over a period of time, as he got better at speaking it, and as he worked with Pransky and Blevins and Dick and Bettinger and all these people who were all psychologists and psychiatrists and eminent people in their field, his story got better. It got clearer. It got effective. And once the three principles themselves evolved out into the world, they then became the metaphor to take it forward. But just a metaphor. But he still had to learn that. He still had to work his way through it. He still had to do all of those things. And would he have got there at some stage? I suspect he would have. But the more that he spoke about it, the more that he connected, the more that I'm sure he learned from other human beings, the more effective he became at communicating himself. Now, I likened this to, and when I said this to you, what I have seen and what has become very apparent to me recently is this. This whole wisdom thing gets all jumbled up as strictly spiritual, period. And people didn't miss the wood for the trees. And the reality is that when somebody, and it's just, if somebody, and I use this example, if somebody decided they were giving up nursing and wanted to become an artist, there would be the most extraordinary level of support for this person, for their bravery, for you go, follow your wisdom, you're doing the right thing. But suddenly when a post comes up, like I wrote about commitment and following my wisdom to learn coaching and go forward, it created a whole slew of back and forth between why do you need a coach to you go, rather than you go, follow your wisdom. And it really became apparent to me in this, and in relation to my own previous trade as a hairdresser. I was a forester before I became a hairdresser 30 years ago. So when I entered the salon, and I knew within an hour of entering the school, this is what I wanted to do. It was instantaneous. There was no black or no grey area. I just really loved it. I didn't know how to hold a hairbrush because I didn't know what even a hairbrush was, or combs or types. I knew nothing. I was a complete blank slate. And 18 months later, I was teaching hairdressing. I was teaching people who were 30 years hairdressing how to cut hair. I just dropped straight down into it. It wasn't just, but I had to learn my craft. I simply had to learn to go from having no information, no understanding of the job, to teaching it within 18 months. It's pretty unheard of in this industry, to be truthfully honest. But I just followed my wisdom, Kush. I learned my craft, but I never knew about wisdom. It just struck me as common sense to learn how to become a better hairdresser. Now, could I become a better hairdresser at home, practicing on people's hair without this education? I don't know. But the more I stuck with it, the more I spoke to the teachers, the more I studied with this incredible hairdresser. He was an Englishman living in nearby, who had a real strong understanding of how to cut hair. And he took my enthusiasm and he ran with it and he educated me and really gave me a foundation of a career that has spanned 30 years. But it was about learning the craft. It was about learning how to cut hair. It was learning understanding hair. It was learning about the movement of hair, the types of hair, the effect of hair, the science of hair itself. So we got deeply immersed in, but we didn't look at it as wisdom. I didn't look at it as anything else other than this is common sense. To be better at my job, to be better at my craft, I learned how to do it.
So I'm just going to jump in there, Billy, because I'm hearing something that's really important that I don't want people to miss. And it's something that I've been saying, you and I have had conversations about, and it was the insight that I had a few years ago that coaching is a profession. And I think, I'm going to bang on about it. People maybe have heard me say this before, but I think some of our colleagues, think, well, coaching, therapy, training, it's all the same. You basically teach people the principles. And you can, right? Like, I think you can be a 3 principles teacher. I think you can be a 3 principles therapist. I think you can be a 3 principles coach. You can do all of those things. And there are many, many, many similarities between those different roles or jobs or professions, right?
Sure.
But there are differences. And I think when I didn't see the difference between what a coach was and a teacher was and a therapist was and a practitioner was, I didn't do so well. Like I was jumbling it all up in my head. Right? And I think what you're pointing to is we see this easier in other professions because we see them as a profession. Right?
Yes.
Like I don't think anyone would think, okay, I want to become a doctor. Well, just get really, really grounded, follow your wisdom, and then just go out and practice. Right?
Yeah.
And just make mistakes and you learn and you'll get better. Right? We probably wouldn't say that. We say, well, it probably makes sense to go and get some education. It probably makes sense to go and do some training, right? Well, it'd be illegal if you didn't, right? And probably harmful to many people. It makes some sense to go and do that stuff. And we can see that if people that were practicing medicine, the more wisdom that they had and the more open they were to learning new stuff, the better they'd be as doctors, right? I'm not moving away from that. But it's about, to me, we see that as a profession. You talked about nursing, you talk about hair. We see them as professions. Now, to me, I think one of the biggest misunderstandings is a lot of people who have come into coaching, like including me, either we came, like I came to coaching first, but I didn't spend a lot, like my first training was a 3P training, right? So I hadn't done anything else around what coaching is. My first thing was thrown in, Jamie Smart, and it was like, boom, that's it. So I got immersed in the principles, which were incredible, life-changing, but I kind of jumbled it all together. And it's interesting because I see the coaches who tend to do well. This is a generalization, I understand, but the coaches who tend to do well, or even therapists or psychologists, they get a profession, like they're doing some work, right? And like George was a Gestalt therapist first, came across Sid Banks, and then brought that into his work. Right, Dr. Mark Howard was a psychologist, clinical psychologist, came across the principles, brought that into his work. Same with Dickin Bettinger. If I see this on the coaching side, Michael Neal did lots of things, but I guess you'd call him an NLP coach. Same as Jamie Smart, came across the principles, brought this into their practice, brought this into their work. And I kind of see this. I'm sure there are other examples of people that didn't, but generally that's what I see. Because whether they know it or not, they've got some foundation of the profession that they're in, and then they bring the principles into that, into the work they're already doing.
It brings up a very interesting point, Kush, about seeing beyond the intellect. And just as I'm listening to you talking about it, for me, once I understood what the three principles were pointing to, which is life unfolding, that means that everything that I have learned, I can disseminate as either good for me or bad for me in that sense. And I know if I'm moving in the right direction, or, well, a lot of the time, there are times we don't see it for sure. But why would one dismiss a lifetime of learning, a lifetime of experiences, a lifetime of knowledge accumulated, rather than recognizing that the three principles as they are, as just a metaphor, as nothing else, just a metaphor as how life unfolds within every human being. That's it. So wisdom presents itself in common sense. It presents itself in whatever format it does, as long as you recognize the inside out nature of it. And for me, it makes real clear sense that the better I become at my craft of coaching, the better I become at it. The clearer my understanding is, the better and more effective my impact is when it comes to discussing whatever the nature is of the issue in front of a client. It's not about me trying to teach somebody the three principles. It's just not about that.
No.
It's, I mean, truthfully, I rarely speak about the three principles as a format with clients, because it's about the day-to-day unfolding of their lives and how they see past the blocks that they have, and they become effective in their lives.
You know, you reminded me of something which I want to go back to a little bit, Billy, is that because we're talking about the craft of coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's something that I realized. Some people say, well, this isn't just affecting three principles coaches, this is all coaches. And they're absolutely right. They're absolutely right, because I'm going to try and mind my language a little bit, but there's an awful lot of bullshit that's out there that is sold to coaches, right? Various different training programs do this. I remember when I was looking around to find a coach training, there was something that I found online that was $300. That was like a 6 or 12-week online program that was like, if you do this program, and I don't even know if there was any video involved, right? Like, it was very high level. Do this program and you will get a certificate to say you are a life coach. And I can pretty much guarantee, I'd probably put money on it, that people that do that program and just do this $300 thing, they're not going to be doing very well in this profession, right? And there's so many, and it's not even about the money or the length of time. There are a lot of trainings out there, and I've seen them, you know, I've seen other coaches. This profession isn't very well understood. This is a very new profession, the profession of coaching. So what we've got
But a profession it is.
But a profession it is. So what we've got is, we've got overall this profession, which very few people understand what it takes to be successful in this profession. And it doesn't take shrewdness. It doesn't take charging high fees for the, you know, for the sake of charge. There's a lot of misunderstanding that I see generally in this profession. And then to that, I think we're adding, you know, like, oh, from our side, okay, just understand the principles, follow your wisdom, and then you'll make it. And so many of us are struggling. And I'm like you, I think there's a bit of common sense. Like, I think Sid Banks once said, you know, common sense, wisdom is common sense, or something like that. It's the same thing. And to me, sometimes we can overlook that. And I know sometimes I read some discussions online and my head just spins. Like, when people get really complicated talking about inside out, outside in, and is this inside, and what if this, and it's just like, okay, that's, as soon as something goes over my head like that, I'm just like, it's too complicated, keep it simple. And for me, keeping it simple is, if I want to do good at something, it makes sense to me to go and spend some time with someone who's already done good in that area that I want to get better at, right? And that doesn't mean you have to do that. It's not turning it into a technique. And I trust my wisdom in who I spend time with, and I trust my wisdom in what I take from them. I can discard things from them. There are things that I disagree with my coach on. There are things you disagree with me on. That's okay.
Got it.
But it's not about removing that. Like you and I have talked about. I wanted to get in shape, and not just get in shape. I wanted to get my body back in okay condition because I'd damaged my knee. I'd torn my meniscus, and I tried for ages to do it on my own, and everything I did just made it worse. And so I'd done nothing really extensively for 4 years because I didn't know what I was doing. And then I found a personal trainer, someone who had got experience of working with people with my kind of injury. I spoke to him. We had a good connection. I sensed that he could really help me. And I've been working with him now for 14 months. And I'm in probably the best shape of my life, or close to the best shape of my life. Right? Now, that doesn't mean, like I've gone outside in with the realm of health. No, it's common sense and wisdom to me to go, yeah, that makes sense to me to go and talk to someone and get some support from someone who can help me in this arena. Now, I want to make clear, I don't think you're saying that you need a coach, right? Like I wouldn't say that. Are there people out there who are coaching that don't have a coach? I'm sure that there's always examples, there's always outliers, right? And absolutely trust your wisdom on what makes sense for you. I think you and I would both say that. But I'd also say, this is what I did, right? I looked around and I thought, what's worked for me in the past? And what do I see other people, like, if there's only 5% of coaches who are really doing well, what are they doing? Because is there a blind spot for me?
Correct.
And one of the things I saw was, they got a really good coach. And so when I went out and looked for a coach, and I say this time and time again, don't just get a coach, right? Go and do your homework, do due diligence, find someone who you have confidence can help you and you resonate with, and you really know as best you can this is the right coach for you. And I really spent my time, I spent many months looking for my coach and finding the right coach. And when I did, it's made enormous impact on my business. But, I want to say this, like you talk about us working together, I'd probably be a terrible coach for some people. I'd probably be a terrible coach for people in this group, right? I've got my style. I've got my way of saying things. It's not a formula of like, go and hire Kush because then he will help you grow your practice, or go and hire Billy because, you're gonna do something, or you're gonna help people with something.
So what I push in the post of finding a coach that's moving in the direction that you want to go in. Because this type of coaching isn't for everybody. Some people are very technique based. I don't know what floats a person's boat and works with them. It just makes sense to me that you and I share a lot of the same values around this. And I did say this, that there are many coaches I could work with. Gosh, I know that, I get that. But for me, I like your approach. I like the idea of a heart-centered coaching practice. It just deeply resonates with me. Now, I didn't really have the experience or understanding of what a heart-centered coaching practice was, but when I heard it, I recognized it as the direction I want to move in. Now, I could have a go at trying to set it up, and I'm sure I'd set up some format of it, but it wouldn't be my new norm. It wouldn't have been as effective. Now, I don't need you, Kush. That is a reality. You don't need me. That is a reality. In the sense that I want to learn from you because I want to move in this direction. And to me, it makes clear sense to work with somebody who moves in the direction I want to go in and sees the value in what I see the value in. Now, one of the great lessons, just to say this to you, Ankush, was with Simon. You've met Simon, I think. I remember we did it. Simon was my first coach. and still to this day remains perhaps one of my closest friends. And Simon came into my life at a time when I was an absolute basket case. I mean, I really was a basket case. And bit by bit, we managed to turn my life around and get a handle on things and slow stuff down and gradually learn that I am okay and to see this. But there came a stage in our relationship, and this is a really important lesson that I learned at the time. And Simon said, he said to me, the kind of help that you're looking for is not the kind of help I can give you. But I will be your friend and I will stay your friend, and we'll work together to find that person to work with you. So what became apparent to me out of that single lesson was relationships do come and go. But working with the person that will serve you best in that time to move forward, whatever it is that you want to move forward with, makes great sense. It makes great sense. And it can be classed as being spiritually guided. It can be classed as wisdom. It just doesn't matter what words you work on. Because we get caught up in the spirituality of it, and we get caught up in the unicorns of it. And we missed it. There is really a simple, pragmatic approach to this, that not everybody is inside out in their thinking. You do need to work with them where they're at and then bring them in a direction that is inside out working for them.
So I want to I want to do two things, Billy, because I'm aware of time. So one thing I want to do is I want to invite any questions. So I know we've got a bunch of people watching. So if you've got any questions for Billy or I, bring that in. And before you go, Billy, I want to ask you, because you're saying all of this stuff and I like it and I'm resonating. And I've talked about coaching as a skill set. That was one of the other posts I wrote recently. What skills have you learned? Like practically, let's tell people, what have you learned practically that's helped you, be more successful as a coach?
That is a really good question, Kush, because lots of stuff, the shift has been that's a really good question. The shift has been towards the other person's growth. The shift has been away from trying to be a teacher. The shift has been away from being the person to have all the answers. The shift has been to learning how to question, learning how to see what they're not seeing. And then in a constructive and simple manner, bring that understanding around. There are so many little things, Kush, but what it has done is that it has moved my understanding of the principles into the area of impact, not just grounding. Grounding is one thing. Grounding is the understanding of the principles, and the clearer we see it in ourselves. But the impact of that and understanding that playing out in another human being, and then being able to take a person within their lives and work with them within their lives and move them in the direction that they're going in quickly, for the want of a better description. There's so many little ways, Kush. To be truthfully honest, it's a really good question. But it's a really fundamental shift in my understanding of what it means to work with people. It's a fundamental shift in it. That there are different ways of working with people. And my job isn't to give you the answers. My job is to facilitate that in a lot of ways. It takes many forms, to be truthfully honest, Kush. It's a question that is worth thinking about. What actually has it brought into my life? I will say, if I'm to use a word, I would use the word impact.
So let's take examples of that, because again, I think the examples are really important. So a lot of people say, yeah, well, I don't tell my clients the answers, but they are, right? So what I hear in what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear is, and again, if we've got questions, please post them, and we'll try and answer a few. Is on point in giving people the answer. I think it's stuff like, oh, I've got X problem, or I've got, like, let's say a relationship problem, right? That's a good one. I'm struggling with my partner, my husband or my wife, right? And so and so is happening, whatever. And as the coach, we can see, well, actually, they're caught up in the outside in. So I think what you're saying is, giving people the answer is to say to them, well, that's your thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're not feeling your wife or your husband, you're thinking about your husband or your wife or what they've done. That's giving them the answer. Right? That's telling them, or that's teaching them. And I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is pointing them and coaching them around seeing this themselves, is asking them questions such as, does it look like to you your wife has the ability to make you feel X by saying Y? And getting them to challenge their beliefs and ideas and concepts of how they're seeing the world right now, which is outside in. Is that kind of a good example of the difference?
It is that, Kush. I'm just winding down a 6-month contract with a woman who had, she did a very senior position within a financial institution in Australia, and she led sales teams. And for a number of years, they were the leading sales team in the financial services of this company. But it came at a huge cost to her, an absolutely enormous cost. It just burnt her right out about March, April last year. So she'd been following some of my writing, then she saw the offer I had put up to start the coaching, the 10-year offer, which I might add was just the smartest and quickest way to get going, to be truthfully honest. And we started talking. We had 1 or 2 conversations. I really would love to take you up on the offer. Will we do that? And I said, fine, I'd be delighted. And off we went. So at the start of the conversation, what became really important to me was that she was just so completely burnt out. She really was just, and everything was wrong. Her work was wrong. Her mother had passed away, and her relationship with her mom was wrong, and all her feelings were coming from everywhere else in the circumstances, and so on and so forth. Now, I could have given her the brain dump. I could have given her the answer straight away. I could have given her the whole 3P shtick and said, there you go, here's your answer. It would have meant nothing to them, because she wouldn't have had the context of the understanding of it. And one of the things that I find incredibly important in my coaching is creating that context with them, so they can see the difference between being burnt out and not being burnt out, seeing where their thinking is coming from, seeing where their feelings are coming from in relation to the circumstances that are outside of them. And like you say, do you think your feelings are coming from your work, or from how you see, from the incident, or how you see your work, etc.? And I remarked in one of the early conversations when I had said this to her, that this was probably one of the best decisions that she's ever made, slowing down her life and taking her foot off the gas for a little while. And that she then stepped out and reached out to somebody to help her make sense of where she was. And rather than taking 3 months off work, she recognized that she needed 6 months off work. And we worked together, and like you say, we're just winding down now. And she's now gone back into the financial services market again. She's had a number of job offers, and this time, rather than jumping on a job offer, she said, whoa, wait a second now. And she slowed everything down. And she's now looking at what serves her best, what serves her needs best. You know, am I jumping and going to take this job because I'm afraid I may not get another job? So she started to recognize the fear or the insecurities or the anxieties about taking jobs and why she should take a job, and does this job best serve her really and what she wants to do with her own life.
Yeah.
So she started to see the difference between a fear-based reactionary decision and taking ownership and seeing, does this best serve me? And on the 26th of December, and I had contacted my clients, and so I just wished them all a happy Christmas. And the words were, you were right, this was the best decision I made this year, and you were the best decision I made this year to work with you. Because I could have fed her all of this stuff, Ankush. I could have given her all this, and it would have meant nothing to her. But instead, over that period of time, creating context and creating the understanding and quarterbacking it, she still has to live her life. She's living in Australia. You know, from our weekly chats. Sorry, Chris, go on.
No, I just want to get to the question because I know you've got to go in a few minutes, and it kind of reiterates it. So Ivo's saying, so instead of teaching, you point them to it by questioning them.
Yes. Yes, of course. Because it isn't about me. I already have my understanding about the principles, Ankush.
Yeah.
I already have my understanding about the inside out. It's about them seeing their understanding, their version of it. And my job is to help them see that for themselves.
Yeah.
Because my understanding is my understanding. It's not theirs. So I can, like I say, give them the brain dump, or I can work and create context and ask questions and create stories and metaphors and move things back and forth until it starts to make sense for them, until they start to see it for themselves. A brain dump is only going to work so far.
So what Nikki's saying is, what I hear you saying, Billy, is you've got much better at pointing people to their misunderstandings, and so they're likely to have an insight. Smiley face. That's grounding, just different terminology.
Yes, certainly. Certainly, Nikki. And I had that, and I had the understanding of the principles long before I got into the coaching aspect of it. And I can tell you, I got so hung up on it. And I got so mangled up in it. And it was one of the reasons why I said, this coaching thing isn't really going to work for me. And it was one of the reasons I think I stepped back from it for a while. Because even I recognized myself that this is just really not working. Because I was trying to give people my understanding. That only kind of works so far.
The other thing I want to add to this, Billy, is how important context is. Right.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the things that because it's so Ivo's asked, you point them to it by questioning. Yeah, and I don't want to turn questioning into like that's the thing you just got to go and question, because it doesn't always, that it doesn't always work like that.
No.
It's a really, really powerful thing. But it's not only that. To me, I give myself permission that anything that helps the client, like that's the thing of the profession. It's like anything that works, anything that helps, and questioning is so important in that, and a really, really big part of it. And
but that's the wisdom of the tree. I would say, because that's the wisdom of understanding. You know, not dispelling all of the knowledge that you have.
Yeah.
You're now bringing that knowledge into play with the client that's in front of you, because if they're inverted commas on the outside in, they're most likely going to respond to an outside in, an inside, or an outside in metaphor, or switched to an inside out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're meeting them where they're at with this.
Yeah.
But now that you have the understanding of the principles yourself, you can then construct, for the want of a better description, I don't know what the right word would be, in with the client, you can create the context around that then, and you can create the differences between them, and you can see the differences between them, and you then, like Nikki was saying, you're then creating the space through that collaboration for insight, but their insight.
Do you need to head off, Billy?
I'm okay for a couple of more minutes, Kush.
Okay, Kevin.
If there's anybody else that's.
because Kevin said something which I love. He said the questioning is maybe the most powerful tool I use. It opens up the conversation, points them to an understanding. But I found they often come to an insight I didn't see coming too. Clients are just the most amazing people. And that is so true. I love it. I love it, Kevin. You know, and the way I look at that, and I let people know this, that our lives are not compartmentalized, right? So if a client comes to me for relationship coaching with their other half, it's not going to only impact their relationship, because what's really going on is a misunderstanding. We know that, right? Or we can often see that there's a misunderstanding there that they don't see. Sometimes we might not see it, but I know that's what's going on. And if that misunderstanding goes, it's not just holding up that misunderstanding over there, it's probably holding up misunderstanding elsewhere too. So for example, if you've got a misunderstanding around your partner, like respecting me, my partner does this, it's disrespectful. Well, that whole concept of disrespect is made up, and it's probably manifesting not only with your partner, but it might manifest with your employees or your boss, or with your cousin or one of your friends. You know, it's not just in one area. It's not just in one area, and also impacts how you treat others. So I really love that.
It is very true. And I love it when a client gets an insight like that.
Yeah.
Because it impacts me as well. Because I don't see it coming.
Mm.
And I go, holy shit, wow, that is brilliant. You know, and in that moment I get an upload.
Mm.
And this is probably, and I'd like to say this, Kush, maybe as part of this before we go. It's how much I get out of it.
Mm.
Oh my God, I get so much from clients.
Mm.
I learn so much about myself and about my own understanding, and about how other human beings see themselves and see their lives. And it's constantly updating me. It's constantly updating my own understanding.
Mm.
And it gives me so much nourishment. It really genuinely does.
Nikki's left a bunch of comments. One of them I would love to talk about quickly. And if you got to go, Billy, that's
okay.
Great.
Yeah, I'll put the flag up. It's okay. Go on. Yeah.
Kush, practically how coaching with you has helped me is I've been able to look at myself and see where I have integrity and where I lack it. You can tell me where I'm lacking integrity, but until it makes sense to me, realization/insight, I still won't do anything with it. That's not because I'm obstinate, although I am, LOL, but because until I see it for myself, I'm going to have to rely on faith in you and beliefs rather than insight. I love that, and I wanted to address that because it's so true. And Nikki, me too. Sometimes our coaches see something that is so blatantly clear to them, and we cannot see it. I've had moments like that with Steve, and I think there is a skill in a coach pointing, questioning, prodding around our misunderstandings, which are holding us back from where we want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And
I will say, Kush, the time issue, just in relation to that, what pops into my head was, you know, with the situation with integrity, and you and I spoke at depth about integrity. But the one that popped into my head was my timekeeping. And vertical was in this back to that word commitment again. You know, I'd be rushing, I'd be coming in the door, and I'd be wheezing, you know, getting out of the car, and I'd be talking to you, and I'd be rushing into the office, into the kitchen, the salon, and we'd have started our call. And then we spoke about the other areas in my life where timekeeping affected me. You know, and how it played out in my own job in the salon, and how it played out in my... And I would have to say that there are still some blind spots in my timekeeping, but I would say there has been a massive improvement. I never late for your calls, unless a circumstance is exceptional with a client that I can't simply walk away from a particular moment with them. I would finish and be ready on time for the next client, and I will always give myself a little bit of time just to gather myself and move forward. You know, and my timekeeping, and when I'm starting at 11 o'clock with a client, I am on the phone at 11 o'clock unless something extraordinary has got in the way.
Yeah,
and that is just one of those simple things.
And I think the skill as a coach, or one of the skills or assets, I think, which I've seen change in me, is I had to point at that a few times before you saw it.
Yeah.
And I think, part of the skill of a coach is not being, for me anyway, was not being afraid to have that conversation again. And not doing so in a like, oh, why don't you get this? Because that is a grounding thing. It's not me seeing it, but lovingly pointing out, going, hey, Billy, this is something that's showing up. This is something that you're not seeing. This is affecting areas. How is it affecting those areas? Do you see this? And it's conversations I've had to have a few times with a number of clients. And that comes into partly skill and also getting out of the coach's own head to be able to have that on what might seem like uncomfortable conversations. And on top,
and it was uncomfortable for me, Ankush.
Yeah.
It genuinely was uncomfortable for me because it's the loving call out. Calling me out on my timekeeping and the bullshit around my timekeeping and the stories that I would have had. No, it wasn't the slap around you gave me, but it was very clear. And we spoke about it, and we spoke about the areas that it affected my life. But it was how I was able to run the rule across other parts of my life. And how understanding that one thing in our conversations and how it's played out now in my conversations with my clients. There you go. Yeah. Perfect example. Yeah. That is the perfect example of it. How my learning this lesson from you about timekeeping and about being on time and the professionalism of timekeeping and being on time for your own clients has now played out in my conversations and in my place with my clients.
Yeah. And I think
that is the perfect example of it.
And I think the skill is, it's not about timekeeping as like this is a behavior. It's about pointing out what underpins that. And to me, again, coaching from a 3P understanding is helping clients see that. Like what's behind that? What's behind you being late? What's behind this lack of integrity? Why are you doing that? What misunderstanding have you got that makes sense to you? What is the logic behind that? So here's Nikki's challenge. I'd love to have Nikki on this too, actually. It'd be great. Maybe we can do another one with Nikki. I'm not sure that even that's a skill, Kush. Isn't that about insight too? Somewhere you've had a realization that it's necessarily to call someone out despite any feeling if you're to be an effective coach. You know what? I'm not sure, Nikki. I've had conversations with Steve where Steve had to point that out to me. And did that lead to a realization that I had? And some of this might be semantics, right? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Like Sid Banks said, don't listen to my words. Perhaps. And my kind of issue with saying it's all grounding or, well, it's all just about insights is then we can sometimes ignore how we got to those, right? So, of course, any growth that my client has is coming about because of their realization, their insights. But it's helped by me like trying to take the legs out of those misunderstandings. And so Steve's done that for me. Now you could say, well, my grounding's deepened around coaching, which is true. Another way to say is I've grown more skilled as a coach. You could say both, and maybe it's semantics, but I think that what's more poignant is looking at, well, what do we mean behind those words? What does it actually look like, right, when you're sitting with someone? Because I know Aaron Turner says it's all grounding, and actually when I had a conversation with him and we did a 2-part thing on this group, which you can find, he's actually right when you look at what his definition of grounding is, and when I say it's not grounding, I think I'm right when you look at what my definition of grounding is. And it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. For me, it's about understanding what's behind his words, which were really helpful to me, and then what's behind my words, which can be really helpful to people too. Because when I used to hear it's all grounding, that kind of led to some blind spots for me. And what I found is it's not just me. When I have conversations with people, like, I mean, literally all the effing time, just how this plays out for them too. And okay, so Nick, here's another thing. Nikki's saying skills won't improve if you don't realize something in that for yourself. For example, this feels hard, but I've got to say it. So you say it, and then something changes. You realize it wasn't that hard. Absolutely, absolutely. So, and I think what you're pointing to, Nikki, is taking action. And again, we could have a whole much longer conversation and go deep in this. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying there. Absolutely. I guess what I'm trying to point people to is the danger potentially of, well, really both sides. One of, it's all grounding, and I know you're not talking about that either. But the other side, I think, is a little bit of danger of there's no skills needed to be a coach, right? And therefore not kind of going down the road. And I think, Nikki, like, it's great you're asking these questions, because I think you model this yourself, right? Like you're so inspirational. I think you're such a great leader in this coaching community that you try things out for yourself. And in doing so, I've certainly seen you're a much better coach now than you were 12 months ago. And the fact that you're a much better coach through going out and coaching and through trying things out, yes, your realization deepens, your grounding deepens, you've had insight, but it's through that being good at your profession, that has led to an increase, I would say, in your success. Now, on timekeeping, I am going to go, not for me, but for you, because I know you've got a date this evening with your girls and your boys. So let's leave it there. And again, if this has been really helpful, I'd love to do this again. Nikki, if you want to join me, this is a great topic. I'd love to have you on here, like I've had Billy on, and we can organize that and do it again. It'd be a lot of fun. And maybe if someone, I'd love to have more questions too. This has been great. So thanks a lot, Billy. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. And thank you everybody for turning up and asking questions and whatever. And Nikki, you're a rock star.
All right, take care.
I do, just before you go, Kush, I love Nikki. I love the way she shows up all the time. And I always hear Nikki in what she says. And to me, that's just so fundamentally important, to hear the person themselves. And I love it. I won't say I model myself on it, but I find it inspiring. And I think that's brilliant. Okay?
100%.
Talk to you later, guys. Thank you very much for everything. Good night. Off to my date. Kush, don't forget your passport. Okay? And have a great time in Vegas.
Take care.
Bye-bye, buddy.